This presentation, we are going to talk about investigating walking and biking activities among low-income African Americans. The team members are Dr. Mansoura Jayhani, myself, and Ms. Ramina Javid. So a brief introduction about ourselves. Dr. Jayhani is a professor and director of both the Urban Mobility and Equity Center and National Transportation Center at Morgan State University. She has a multidisciplinary background in civil engineering, system economics, and computer engineering. She has over 17 years of experience in applied research and transportation planning, modeling, travel behavior, intelligent transportation system, connected and automated vehicles, traffic safety, artificial intelligence. She has published in books and about 100 publications. She has been PI or co-PI for around 37 research grants totaling over 8 million. And myself, I'm a postdoctoral research associate at National Transportation Center and also an adjunct faculty in Department of Transportation and Urban Infrastructure at Morgan State University. I'm also 10 years experienced transportation engineer in the field of transportation engineering, and I have conducted various research projects. My research interests include travel pattern analysis, driver behavior analysis, equity in transportation, and shared mobility systems. I earned my Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering, Master of Science in Transportation Planning, and PhD in Transportation Engineering. I serve as a member on 2 TRB standing committees. Ms. Ramina Javid is a PhD student in Transportation Engineering at Morgan State University. She has a few years of experience in transportation planning field and has conducted different research projects. Her research interests include equity in transportation, micromobility, drivers' behavior, and GIS. And she has served as a member of the TRB Standing Committee on Rural Intercity Bus and Specialized Transportation. Well, this webinar is presented to you by National Transportation Center at Morgan State University. This center advanced the U.S. technology and experts in transportation research and technologies transfer on the university level. You can find more information about us through our social media, and also you are more than welcome to shoot us an email. Well, in this presentation, first, we are going to talk about the introduction, and then we'll talk about the literature review that we did, and then data and methodology, and then we are talking about our analysis and results, and then we'll discuss our findings, and then we will wrap up the presentation by a summary and conclusion. Well, active transportation has been very, very popular these days in the United States. Many factors affect walking and bicycling behavior, such as, for example, travel time, social demographic information such as age, gender, ethnicity, education, income, household, and all of these things. Well, understanding of pattern of walking and biking among minorities is very important, and especially for low-income African Americans. Even though there have been lots of researchers in this area, but to the best knowledge of us, no one has still used the latest NHTS data to focus specifically on walking and biking activities of low-income African Americans. Well, consequently, the main goal of this study was to investigate the walking and biking activities among low-income African Americans in the United States. So to reach this goal, we break it down to different objectives. First thing, that we investigated low-income African Americans' use of walking and biking activities among all races. Second, we explored the reason for not walking and biking among low-income African Americans. And then we investigated low-income African Americans' use of walking and biking activities for exercise and bike share programs. And then we explored investigating the use of active transportation to reduce the financial burden of travel among African Americans. And eventually, we investigate the social demographic characteristic of low-income African Americans. And then the very first thing that we did is we went through the literature review. For the literature review, in order to make sure that we are covering everything available out there, we went through the systematic and comprehensive review pattern of the literature review, which called PRISMA. Preferred reporting items for systematic review and meta-analysis, also known as PRISMA, is the most famous known for among professionals and researchers. So the very first thing is that we came up with the most important data sets that we wanted to explore them. So we went through the Science Direct, Scopus, and Transportation Research Record. We used different keywords to find anything related to the African Americans and walking and biking activities. So first we find out 3,393 articles. And then after that, we went through the process of removing the application. We read the titles, we removed around 1,000 of them. And then we went through the reading abstracts and we excluded again another 86 of them. And we ended up with 62. And then we were able to retrieve 60 quality papers that related to our topics. What we have understood from the literature is that, first of all, the literature in this area has an upward trend. It means that during the recent year, there are more research and more activities in bike shares and bike walking, African Americans, minorities, specifically since 2019. We were able to categorize all the available studies in 5 major classification: active transportation user characteristics. There were some other studies that were focused on active transportation as a mode to work or a school. And then another one was active transportation and social disparities, active transportation infrastructure. And the most recent one, we're talking mainly about active transportation during the COVID-19 pandemic. What we have found during these literature reviews, studies, we understood that first, low-income individuals and minorities use bike less than other population groups. Also, we understood that bike share stations were built in areas where residents have higher income and socio-demographic status. For example, low-income and minorities neighborhoods in the United States have limited access to bike lanes. Also, the literature showed us that bike share is more resilient than other types of transportation mode, making it a very good choice for any pandemic such as the one that we had, the COVID-19 pandemic. Also, more people are shifting from using public transportation to bike share systems, which are more sustainable. And eventually, it was identified that addressing the equity impact of active transportation, such as increasing access to bike share stations for a disadvantaged group, is very important. All right, now let's talk a little about data methodology. And now I'm handing it to Ms. Javid.
Thank you, Dr. Waziri. In this study, we used the latest NHTS data set, which is for 2017. So the NHTS is the most valid and the largest national transportation related data in the United States. It is conducted by SHWA, designed to better understand the travel behaviors and patterns of Americans. So it is the main national source of data on how the travel behavior of American public is changing as demographic, economic, and cultural changes take place. So it contains different data sets, including person, household, trip, and vehicle level data. The person data set consists of personal characteristics of each respondent from each household. The household data set describes the household characteristics of each respondent. The trip data set consists of the trip characteristics of each trip that was taken on the travel day. And the vehicle data set describes the vehicle characteristics of each vehicle in the household. So the first step in our process was to calculate the percentage of participants in each race based on our data. The person data set was collected from more than 264,000 participants who took part in the survey. So we aggregated the levels of the race variable into 4 categories, including African Americans, Asians, white population, and other races. And to ensure the collected data represents the whole United States population, we used the applied weight provided in the NHTS data set to weight the data to ensure the results represent the whole United States population. After the process, the weighted data include almost 300 million people for the person data set. So we did the same process for the household data set as well. The sample data included of 129,000 households, and the weighted data included more than 117 million households. So you can see here the percentage of weighted and unweighted of each race, and you can see that African Americans have the percentage of 12.7% of the person data set. So these are all so NHTS data set have lots of variables, and we only focus on variables related to biking or walking. In this slide, you can see all the variables we use to analyze the biking behavior. And this is all the variables that we use for walking behavior. We're gonna talk about the variables in the following slide. So as I mentioned before, to ensure the collected data represent the whole United States, we applied the weight provided in the NHTS data set. The variables first were analyzed among all races that we previously talked about, and then we only focused on African Americans and analyzed all the variables among different income groups. So after cleaning the data, we had almost more than 18,000 African American participants. And after rating the data, there were almost 37 million people considered for African American population. So you can see here the figures that shows some of the variables related to biking. The figures shows that the average use of bicycle by African Americans is below the total average and less than the white population. They also have the most average in using the bicycle for exercise per week. And on average, African Americans use bike share programs on monthly basis, less than Asians, but more than white population. You can see here variables related to walking. So African Americans count of walk trips per week is more than average and more than other races, and they have more average of walk trips for exercise per week. And this is a variable related to mode to work. So they ask the participants about their the mode that they are using to go to work. And you can see that African Americans use walking and also biking as a mode to work less than other races. So here we have a mode to school and mode from school. And we can see that African Americans use the bicycle more than other races as a mode to school or from school, but they use walking as a mode to school less than other races. So this variable is related to household data set. It asks whether a household use biking or walking as a way to reduce their financial burden of travel. So we can see that African Americans use bicycle and also walking more than white population to reduce their financial burden of travel. This variable is a question that were asked from only California state residents to investigate about reasons for not biking or walking more. So the most repetitive reason for not biking in the infrastructure category was no path, both for African Americans and all races. And also in the safety category, we had not, the reason for not biking is bad lighting. The same thing is for reasons for not walking. And we can see that in the infrastructure category, we have no parks, both for African Americans and other races. And also we have bad lighting in this safety category. So we used an ANOVA test to determine which groups significantly differ from each other. So in terms of bike trips for exercise, it can be concluded that African Americans have the highest use of bicycle for exercise, and the difference is significant. In terms of walk trips for exercise, we can also conclude that African Americans have the highest use of walk for exercise per week. In the next step, we only focus on African Americans, as I told you before. So we have aggregated the income levels of African Americans into 5 categories. low income, lower middle, middle class, upper middle class, and wealthy. So I told you that there were 18,000 African American participants, and for the rated population, we had almost 37 million. These are the biking variables among all the income groups. So low-income African Americans have more bike trips per week compared to other income groups. They use the bike for exercise more than other income groups. But here you can see on the right figure that upper middle class has the highest usage of bike share programs. For walking variables, we can say that low-income African Americans have more average walk trips than other income groups, and also they have walking trips for exercise more than other income groups. There is no specific pattern for walking as a mode to work for low incomes, but they use bicycle as a mode to work more than other income groups. And you can see in these two graphs that low-income African-American students use a bicycle or walk as a mode to go to school or go back from school more than other income groups. And the result is kind of significant. We also talked about the variable reduced financial burden of travel. So low-income households use bike or walking to reduce their financial burden of travel more than other income groups. And this variable that was related to California state is stating that the most repetitive reason for low-income African Americans as a response for not biking is no path and bad lighting. And also for walking, we have no park, no path, and in the safety category, we have bad lighting and heavy traffic. We did again an ANOVA test to see the difference, whether the difference is statistically significant or not. So we saw that in terms of bike trip for exercise, low-income African Americans have a statistically significant higher use of bikes compared to other income groups. And all low-income African Americans have significantly higher use of walk trips and walk trips for exercise. So a total of 6,500 African Americans were considered low income in the NHDS person data set. After the weighting the data, we had more than 14 million African Americans. So you can see in the figure above that which is the distribution of low-income African Americans in the country. And we can see that most of them live in the nation's western and southern regions. And also we talked about reduced financial burden of travel. We can see that Florida, New York, and Chicago had the highest percentage for using bike or walk to reduce financial burden. So, so we analyzed the social demographic information of low-income African Americans, and we saw that the age group of 55 and more make the largest group among them, and more than half of the population are female, and the most common level of educational attainment is high school graduate or GED. Almost half of the low incomes have only one driver in their household, and they only have one vehicle in their household, followed by no vehicle. And most of them live in urban areas. So we also developed two binary logistic regression models to investigate the relationship between using a bicycle and walking to reduce financial burden of travel and socio-demographic information. So the dependent variable was using active transportation to reduce the financial burden of travel, yes or no? So our results showed that African Americans use active transportation as a way to reduce their financial burden of travel more than other races. Their students use active transportation as a mode of transportation more than other races. And also it showed that low-income African Americans have the highest active transportation trips for exercise per week and daily use of active transportation mode, but the lowest use of bike-share programs among all income groups. And also we saw that the most repetitive response for low-income African Americans as a response for not biking and walking more is no path and bad lighting. And the result of the regression model indicated that the number of drivers in the household, living in rural areas, count of household vehicles, they all show a relationship with using active transportation to reduce their financial burden of travel among low-income African Americans. So in this study, we tried to kind of conduct a comprehensive analysis of walking and biking among low-income African Americans. The results showed that different socio-demographic groups are not using active transportation equally or for the same purpose. So one of the limitations of our study is that we use the latest NHTS data set, but it goes back to the year 2017. The newer version of the NHTS was postponed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So in the future, we are planning to kind of compare the results of this study with the new data set that will be hopefully released soon. Thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions, we would be happy to answer them. And you can put it in the chat box.
Okay, thank you very much. So here we have one question and comment basically from Mr. David Cohen. He said, did you look at the NHTS in different geographies, urban, suburban, and rural? And and also he's mentioning that besides not having infrastructure, not having destinations within a reasonable walking or biking distance is an issue in most of the US. That's so true. I agree with that. That's a very good point that you bring it up. Thank you very much, David. We did not look at it in the three different major that you mentioned, areas that you mentioned, but that point is very valid. The reason that some people are not walking or cycling is not because of the lack of infrastructure or something like that, because there is no specific destination sometimes. That's so true. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay, very good. Any more questions? All right. Oh, and one person is asking, could you get a copy of presentation? Absolutely. Please feel free to send us an email, and definitely would be more than happy to share it with everyone that who is interested. Definitely would be more than happy. Thanks for asking. All right. If yeah, here is the emails that you can please feel free to reach out to us. Okay, no more question. It seems that's a very right timing. And thank you very much. Again, I would like to thank Dr. Jayhani and Ms. Ramina Javid for working on this project. Thank you very much. So now we may move on to the next presenter, Mr. Alireza Ansariar.
Thank you, Dr. Azaz.
Sure.
Hello, everyone. I'm Alireza Ansariar, third year PhD student. And today I'm gonna present my presentation. The topic is investigating the traffic behavior of bicyclists in interaction with car users on shared bike lanes without physical barriers. So as you can see, these are the research members. Beside me, Dr. Ana Mardeshiri, Dr. Reza Sadwaziri, and Dr. Mansour Jayhani attended to this paper. First of all, as an introduction, based on the US Bicyclists Participation Report in 2022, a survey regarding the tendency of American people to use a bicycle revealed that 47% of people, the participants would ride the bike if pathways were physically separated from motor vehicles. In that survey, 52.4% worry about being hit by a motor vehicle when riding the bicycle, and only 0.6% of participants, the employee participants, consider biking as an option for commuting to work. Based on another research in 2018, almost 40% of all cyclist roadway fatalities in the United States is based on in overtaking or passing the bicyclist from the car users in the United States. In another research, also in 2019, the interaction of bicyclists and motorized vehicles, especially in overtaking or passing timestamps on shared bike lanes without physical barriers, impose the risk of traffic fatalities on bicyclists. So the aim of this research is, first of all, we are gonna investigate the speed, lateral distance, and brake intensity as a most important characteristics of interaction between bicyclists and car drivers, especially in passing point or overtaking point. We used the K-means clustering and Bonferroni test as two methods which didn't use in the state of the art. And after that, we want to find the highly correlated variables with the speed, lateral distance, and bike brake intensity. As a literature review, when we look at the literature review, most of others work on the speed, and in less than 3 reports and papers, we can see the longitudinal gap or lateral distance considered for interaction between bicyclists and car users. In a state of the art, also, we can see some of the researchers used virtual reality or eye tracker for increasing the accuracy of the research, as we used car simulator and bike simulator in our research. In the research in 2017, Piatkowski found the more bicyclist experience an individual has, the less likely they are to respond aggressively to bicyclists in mixed traffic. And also in another research in 2012, adding shadow or shade the road signs to narrow urban roadway can lead to safer interactions for bicyclists. So one of the main gaps in the literature review is most of the literature review didn't consider anisotropic behavior. The driver reaction to bicyclists in terms of aggressive, slow, or typical. In our research, we consider this thing, and as a main achievement or contribution of our research, first of all, we analyze speed, lateral movement, and bicyclist brake intensity. Bicyclist braking frequency and intensity is the first time in one research we are gonna concentrate on it, but the speed and lateral movement already investigated. In addition to these 3 variables as a dependent variable, other factors, including participants' gender, age, employment, household income, household car ownership, driving experience, weather condition, and bike ridership experiences were analyzed. The frequency of bike crashes and the intensity of braking before and after crashes are analyzed. And we used K-means clustering and Bonferroni test, which didn't use in the state of the art. As a research methodology, we invited 33 participants by using flyer distributed manually online or through social media from the university campus and beyond. First of all, we asked the participants to fill out the pre-survey questionnaires. In pre-survey questionnaire, we asked them about the personal information. After that, in each session, one participant wrote the bike simulator and another one drove the car simulator. And we integrated bike simulator and car simulator together so that the participants who drive the bike simulator could see the location of participants who ride the bike simulator and vice versa, I mean on the screen. Two participants were instructed, as I mentioned, and a real network, including a straight two-way, two-lane route and one signalized intersection was designed. In the next slide, I will explain about 7 scenarios and the difference between scenarios. Also, we provided realistic engine sounds, road noise, passing traffic sounds to simulate the real-world environment. We generated 500 vehicles per hour to simulate peak traffic. And also in collision time, we used the collision sound and a special collision sound, collision message and a special collision sound for participants when they collide to each other. These are our scenarios. In the first and the scenario numbers 1 and scenario number 6, we simulated a different initial position and stop point. In scenario number 2 and 3, we simulated different weather condition. In scenario number 4, we wanted to see what is the interaction of these two road users when there is no traffic and in without traffic condition. Scenario number 5 is changing the color of the pavement, the bike lane pavement, to see what is the reaction of bicyclists and also car drivers. And in scenario number 7, we simulated the confliction between bicyclists and car drivers. In scenario number 7, the bicyclist should go straight and the car driver should turn right when both arrive to the intersection. So Sabolab has a car simulator and bike simulator. As you can see, we integrated these two simulators and the participants could see the location of each other on the screen. We simulated this cross section, this road, and we designed 11 miles per hour for bicyclists as a bike limitation speed. We also considered 30 miles per hour for vehicles. We designed these two signs and also we use chapter 9B of MUTCD. For changing the color of the pavement, we use National Association of City Transportation Officials Guide. In pre-survey results show us 43.8% of participants are male, 56.3% are female. Almost 80% of participants were less than 45 years old, and most of the participants was undergraduate students, and main grade, age range was between 18 to 25. Almost 90% of participants were undergrad, grad, and postgrads. We asked household annual income, household size, employment status, household car ownership, bike ridership, and prevalent trip goals by bike in pre-survey. After each scenario, we asked the participants, both participants, to rate to the safety of each scenario. As you can see, the left figure shows the car simulator participants' opinion about the safety of the road. And the right figure shows the bike simulator participants. In this chart, you can see most of the bike participants, bike riders, believe the safety of the road is not acceptable. On the other hand, most of the car simulator participants believe that the safety of the road is acceptable because they rate more than average and also average. So we designed three hypotheses for this project. First of all, for speed, we considered a 10-second time interval to analyze the interaction of bicyclists and car drivers. We designed a 10-second time interval based on the literature review. And in most of the previous studies, they considered between 5 to 10 seconds as a time interval. For lateral distance, we increased the time interval to 15. I will explain in the next few slides why did we increase the time stamp for lateral distance. And for intensity of bicyclist braking, again, we consider 10-second time interval, same as speed. For lateral distance, as you can see in this figure, we use the UCV road software. It's a Japanese software for simulators. The software can collect the location of a car driver and also bike rider, car driver and bike rider per second from right border or left border. In this project, we consider the distance from right border or right curve. This is the distance of car to right border. This is the distance of bike to right border. This distance was important for us. I mean, the distance between the car and bike per second. The first hypothesis is the speed. As you can see, in most of almost in all of the scenarios, participants prefer to increase the speed. Why we have different number of reliable passing points in each scenario? We collected 33 participants because in each scenario, maybe the bicyclists and car drivers didn't reach to each other. For example, the traffic signal was somehow the bicyclist could pass the intersection, or also this situation may happen for two car simulator. So we excluded the sessions which we didn't have any passing points. As an average, 71% of participants increased their speed when they approach the bicyclist in scenarios 1 to 7. Female participants prefer to enhance their speed after passing point in scenario 1, before a stop before intersection, scenario 2, fog, scenario 6, stop after an intersection, and scenario 7, confliction. In scenario 1 to 7, more than 50% of female participants in age group 18 to 25 prefer to increase their speed. Participants between age of 18 to 25 are 100% likely to increase their speed after overtaking or passing point in without traffic, when there is no traffic. So we use K-means clustering for this project. It means in each scenario, we found the highly correlated, independent variables to those three variables. And as you can see, the significant error in each participant for the best cluster was always less than 5%. For speed, as you can see, in scenario number 4, when there is no traffic, participants prefer to increase the speed. In scenario number 2, in fog condition, they increase the speed almost 1.5 seconds after the passing point, and after that, they decrease the speed. In the rest of the scenarios, they prefer to decrease the speed at least half a second after passing point. For lateral distance, again, in all of the scenarios, participants prefer to increase the lateral distance to bicyclists. As an average, 83% of car simulator participants try to recede from the bicyclist before passing point. In scenario 3 to 7, female participants generally exhibit more conservative behavior when approach to bicyclists. Male participants prefer to keep distance from bicyclists in scenario 2, fog condition. Male and female participants are significantly more likely to increase their lateral distance from bicyclists during the night. As an average, 86% in age group 18 to 25 of female participants increase the lateral distance toward bicyclists. Male participants in age group 18 to 25 exhibited similar behavior to female participants. And changing the color of the pavement for bike lane showed us the female participants, the attention of female participants increased to cyclists when we compare to male participants. So we had two reasons to increase the lateral distance. First of all, based on the literature review. In literature review, most of previous studies suggested 10 to 12. But we increased to 15 because of the sensitivity of bike steering, bike simulator steering. A longer time interval was considered to achieve a higher degree of accuracy and to prevent the impact of bike steering sensitivity on the results. Again, the clusters were less than 5%, the significant error. And as you can see, in all of the scenarios, when they reach, the car simulator part and then arrive to the bicyclist, they prefer to increase the lateral distance. And also, when we look at the number of crashes, we could see participants were so conservative after a crash because they heard the collision sound and also collision message on the screen. So they prefer to more be conservative about the participants. And the third hypothesis was bike brake intensity. It's one of the contribution or achievement of this research. The intensity of bike brake is collected as a dimensionless value between 0 and 1. The closer this value is to 1, the more the bicyclist felt threatened by other road users. As an average, 85% of female participants applied more force to the brake after passing point. Female participants brake more in fog at night and in a standard green pavement condition. As an average, again, 77% of male participants push the brake harder and intensely after the passing point in scenario 1 to 7. The brake intensity of male participants is less than female participants in fog night and with a standard grip pavement. Male participants exhibited more reckless behavior than female participants in condition without traffic. And as a total, in total, we collected 16 collisions between bicyclists and car drivers. And interesting findings was in scenario number 5, when we changed the color of a bike lane, we didn't collect any collision. So this is the bike brake intensity. In scenario number 3, when the weather is night, they push the brake intensely. In scenario number 5, when we change the color of pavement, they push the brake more intensely. In scenario number 1, again, they push intensely, but not more than scenario 5. And in these 3 scenarios, we saw the same behavior. And also in scenario number 4, when there is no traffic, as you can see, there is no huge difference between before passing point and after passing point in terms of brake intensity. So after founding the highly correlated clusters, we use Bonferroni test. In this method, the sum of the squares of each variable is calculated between groups, within groups, and as a total, then a significant error is obtained. We wanted to see the error values which we found from the cluster is accurate. So again, we used a Bonferroni test, and based on the Bonferroni test and trying the clusters, the optimum clusters, we found yes, all the clusters were highly accurate, and all of them, the error of all of the clusters were less than 5%. So from the K-means clustering, we found the highly correlated variables with speed is gender, age, weather, and ownership of a vehicle. Highly correlated variables with lateral distance are gender, age, weather condition, car ownership, and bike ridership experience. And with intensity of braking, also gender, age, and bike ridership experience. And the paper highlighted that the shared bike lane without physical barriers increase the probability of crashes in most of the scenarios. So what can we do to increase the shared bike lane without physical barrier? I mean, to increase the safety of this type of bike lane. By improvement of shared bike lane safety with signs, at least we need to find out, for example, we can simulate and we can simulate different signs in the UCV road and see what's the reaction of I mean car drivers or also bicyclists to the different signs. With well-marked and dedicated space for bicyclists, in some sections of shared bike lane, we can prepare pop-up bike lane with visible paint or using flexible rubber bollard for busier roads. Design one-way shared bike routes and following the same direction as car traffic and condition of parking on shared bike lane. We had also two limitations for this research. First of all, the limited number of participants. As you know, 30 participants for simulating and using simulator studies is very good, I mean, frequency of participants, but we collected the data of this project in the first 2 weeks of December 2021. And after that, this university closed and we didn't have any chance to invite more participants. Also, based on the financial budget, also we invited limited number of participants. And the second limitation was calibration of bike simulator steering. And in some of the scenarios, we needed to recalibrate the bike simulator steering. So fortunately, this research was selected. We presented this research as an oral presentation in TRB 2023, and this research fortunately selected as one of the top-rated research in bike committee. These are the references, and thank you for your kind attention.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Alireza. It was perfect presentation. Okay, we would love to hear from you guys. In the chat, we have one comment says that appreciated. By the way, how do I sign up to get alert when these webinars are available? We will definitely reach out to you whenever that the next webinar is coming, which might be around in 3 months. And we would definitely reach out to DOTs and all the contact lists that we have, definitely including you.
Dr. Raziri, can I chime in?
Go, sure.
Hi, everyone. I'm sorry, at the beginning, my computer crashed and I couldn't get in. So we have an email list. If you want to be included, besides all the advertisement that we do everywhere, please send your email to me and Dr. Raziri. We add you to the email list. We also have our social media. We have Facebook and especially LinkedIn and so many other places, Twitter and Instagram. So it would be great if you can follow us and get all of the news and webinar schedules. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jihani. And thank you very much, Abul Fadl, for your nice comment. And if there is any more questions, we'd love to hear from you. Oh, I see there are some others here. You're very welcome, Saskia. So Alex is asking, were participants informed which scenarios they would simulate before they started? So this is a good question for Alireza. Would you like to go ahead, please? The question is asking, the question is saying that were participants informed which scenario they were simulating before they started?
Totally, we had different sets of scenario, and I mean, we informed the participants. For example, we are gonna start scenario number 1, 2, or 3. I mean, in different sets, we had different, I mean, sorting of scenarios. For example, for one of the participants, we started with scenario 1, 2, for example, after that scenario number 6, 7, and for another participants, we use different.
Yeah, so algorithm means that it's random. We don't do
Yes.
all in the same order. We randomize it to make sure that we don't get the effect of fatigue and also learning effect. But to your question is, no, they don't know what the scenario is about. We may say scenario number 1, but the person doesn't know what is in the scenario.
Very good. Thank you very much, Alireza and Dr. Jayhani. Any more questions? Thank you very much, Parisa. And where the presentation experience bike or so another question for you, Alireza, is Gian is asking were the participants experience bikes or not, bikers or not?
Yes, we invited. That's the. I mean, in also TRB, most of people ask me. We invited the people who already experienced bike. And one of the questions was, I mean, do you have any experience, biking experience?
Thank you very much. Thank you for asking that question, Jan. Any more questions? All right, very good. Thank you very much, everyone. And also at the end, I would like to thank Dr. Jayhani for leadershiping all these webinars and all these projects. Thank you very much for all your efforts. And hopefully we'll present more of our presentations. So this is Friday noon, and I hope that everyone is not too tired. And hopefully everyone gonna have a very good weekend. So again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Other than that, have a wonderful rest of the day and weekend. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye, and thank you, Dr. Vasili.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.